It's still morning, 11:47 here in Oklahoma. Welcome to my channel, Christie's Musings. Before I get started, I always ask you all to like, share, comment, subscribe, but always ask you to please be nice. You don't know what people are going through in life. Working in a medical industry, I know that there's a lot of people with a lot of hard things going on right now. I'm kind of doubtful now about posting on BitChute. I believe that is a person from my past, but somebody is coming on my videos and commenting some really ugly stuff about my sexual behaviors, even though I have not dated or anything since my last divorce. I guess the fact that I've been married 3 times makes me open for all sorts of speculation. I don't know. But all I'm asking is to be kind, and if you don't have anything to say, keep it to yourself. Be nice to me and be nice to others in my comment section. You know, before I get to what I wanted to talk about, though, I do have to address we live in this world as Christians, and the Bible directs us to be kind, right? Be ye kind one to another. It doesn't mean to be ye kind to everybody that thinks like you do. Bible says love one another. Doesn't say love only people that vote like you. Doesn't mean that every time you disagree with somebody, they must have voted for somebody different than you. We have to live in this world, and we need to learn to get along. Was that my piece I give to you? We have to stop this whole playing into these games that we are being set up for left right paradigm. Your neighbor down the road, love your neighbor as yourself. Doesn't say go out and find out if they're Democrat, Republican, or whatever, and then love them if they suit your agenda. Okay? So don't come here and every time I piss you off, trying to call me ugly names and say that I'm ridden with all sorts of sexual diseases, transmitted diseases or whatever. So now that I've got that off my chest, I was going to tell you I have been mostly watching stuff like Star Trek and Twilight Zone, trying to get away from so much horror stuff because there's so many horrors going on in this world that it was affecting my mental status. But the other night, I sat down and there was a new movie suggested, and it's called Talk to Me. And it looked so interesting that I was intrigued, and I was like, let's watch this one. Talk to Me is a 2022 Australian supernatural horror film directed by Danny and Michael Filippo. I hope I said that correctly. Written by Danny Filippo and Bill Hisman, and it's based on a concept by Daley Pearson. The movie, to me, gave me vibes of Jordan Peele's horror movies. He's written the movie Nope. he wrote Get Out and Us. Us is like freaking awesome, if you ask me. But the movie stars Sophie Wilde, who plays Mia, Alex- Alexandra Jensen, who plays Jade, Joe Bird, who plays Riley, and Otis Donji is the boyfriend, Daniel. And Mia, and Jade go to hang out unaware with their mom, unaware what they're up to, against their mom's better advice. They go to hang out at a gathering hosted by Haley and Joss. And they have this severed hand. It's supposed to be a embalmed hand. And it's kind of funny because, they're looking at it, and Mia, she's like, it's so real looking. And the whole conversation, I guess the reason I focused on it so hard is because this hand is it looks so smooth, and it's kind of like in this kind of shape, maybe it's this hand. Anyway, it looks smooth. It looks like a plaster hand, but they say that it's an embalmed hand. And as a person that's worked with paper mache and clay and different media, it's really hard to get things really smooth. With a hand like that, you would think that it was poured into a form. But by them saying that it's an embalmed hand, they said they even go so far in the movie to explain that they think they must have coated it in something because it's really hard, is what they said. And I was thinking, if you coated a real limb with some hardening agent, you'd have to make sure, because the flesh that's inside would ooze out. I don't know. But I did hyper focus on that hand as I was watching it. Hope that I didn't steer you away, but that, from an artistic point of view, I thought that was kind of weird. But these kids, they go to this house. The mom's tried the best she can to make sure that they're going to not be doing anything they shouldn't be doing. But they go to this house, and we've already watched one incident where someone is driven wild, driven to madness at the very beginning of the movie. I'm trying not to destroy too much, too many things for you. But they go, and it's like this thing that they do on social media where they record everything. Somebody's supposed to hold the hand and tell it, talk to me. Hear the thunder. That makes this even more spooky. But they say, talk to me, and then they're supposed to open up to spirits. As a person that's been raised in the church my whole life, I know that you do not talk to dead people. I know there's some people that have gifts and such, and I'm not going to get into all of that, but I will say that there's commands in Leviticus 19:31 and Deuteronomy 18:10 where it tells you not to consort with mediums, and not to talk to people that talk to the dead. We know in First Chronicles 10, 13 through 14 that Saul consulted with a medium and he was punished for it. You know, the witch of Endor, Endor. Um, and then my granddaughter's getting aggravated. So I was always told not to talk to dead people. And, you know, we always, back when I was younger, there was the Ouija boards. And my stepdad, he would, he was very cool. I think I've showed y'all pictures of him. His kind of more of the hippie mentality, good old Southern Democrat. And he would sit us down sometimes at night and tell us spooky stories and play his guitar and everything. And he told us the story about this girl that played, and he always made it seem like it was either him involved in things. He had us convinced for the longest time that he had written that song, Hey Little Red Riding Hood. I thought for sure he wrote that song. But anyway, he would tell us these stories about Ouija boards and stuff and talk about how this girl went crazy because she was playing with the Ouija board. So I knew that we didn't do things like that. As I got older in my 20s and 30s, I started listening to Christian radio, and it was so it's so ironic how God works, the timing of God in your life. I had been listening to this radio program where they were warning about how there was this new curriculum that was going to be launched in a lot of the public schools. And it involved spirit animals. And I cannot for the life of me remember what the name of this program is. But if you go on a DuckDuckGo search right now and try to look for curriculums involving spirit animals, you will see that there are still a lot of um, curriculums that have spirit bears, and spirit animals. And you know, like I said, they have warned on this radio program not to let your children. And, you know, like I said, I'm a new Christian and I'm learning about all of this stuff. And they say, you know, when you talk to spirit animals like this, you know, open yourself up to spirit guides, all of these, because, you know, you think about it, the good ones, they're going to either be resting or they're going to be present with the Lord. So if you've got a spirit that's talking to you, they're more than likely a liar. Okay? There's none of this of Granny hanging around making sure you're okay. Now, I do believe when you go to have a dream, I do believe that the Lord allows them to communicate with you in your dreams and maybe give you some fond memories or whatever. But if you're going and you're speaking to these things, more than likely they are liars and demons. And nobody evidently had told these kids in this movie. And Mia and Jade, and against Jade's wishes, the brother Riley, they go and they talk. They do this thing with the hand. They've got 90-second window. Well, Jade's boyfriend had already had an awful encounter with, and that's Daniel, by the way. Daniel had had a bad encounter, and it had ended, gone past the 90-second rule already. And so I felt like when this happens, that by the 90-second rule being broken, that maybe that had opened up them up to more demonic activity. There's a scene that happens with the dog, and I feel like the people that made the movie, if they thought that they had could have gotten away with it, I think that scene would have been a whole lot worse. That's just my opinion. But when the dog comes running out, you the first thing that pops in your mind is bestiality. So I think that's what they wanted, but they could not play, do that in front of everybody because they know that the movie would have been trashed. I hope I don't get myself in trouble by saying that one word. But anyway, so I felt like with all of that going on and them extending the 90-second rule, that opened them up for more demonic currents or whatever. I will say that another rule was broken in this movie, and that is between Mia and Jade. Mia had dated this guy, and now Jade is dating the same guy. And as far as I know, there's supposed to be a girl code where girls don't date the same guy. And with the way that things are in this world, there's enough men around that you could stick by that girl code. And that would relieve a lot of problems that we women have in life, is if you stick to the girl code. There's enough men. Like I say, there's more women than there are men. So don't break the girl code. But like I said, the thing for me is Mia, she was ripe she is like a freshly plowed field, ripe for this demonic activity because of her mom, the things that had happened with her mom, and by these lying demons that came in, and they're tricksters. They want to lure you in. Oh, and I got myself so sidetracked that the whole reason I brought that up about the curriculum and hearing about that on the radio, the very next day after hearing that, my son came home with a permission slip. So they know that this is wrong, but with a permission slip asking if my son could be part of this curriculum involving these. And they don't tell you that they're dealing with spirit animals, but you have to do your research. And back then, research was not like it is now, where you can get on the computer and everything. I mean, you have to really look into things to see what the curriculum is. But the very next day, he came home with that permission slip. So the schools, like I said, you look it up now, and they're still doing this stuff, and they're calling it other things. But look up spirit guides, spirit animals, curriculums, and you will see there is a host of them, and there's a lot of PDFs that you can download that are being taught in the public school. So don't tell me that they're not teaching religion in the schools. But with this movie, like I said, is a whole cluster pluck with these kids that are left with a single mom, I guess a single mom, raising these children. And a dad that's Mia's dad, Max, is so caught up in his own dealing with his own trauma that he's not paying attention to what his daughter's doing. She just like stays wherever she wants. And these kids are not, they don't have a stepdad like I did that sits down and tells them, hey, you don't do this and you don't do that when it comes to all of these things. Because, like I said, there are items like maybe something that I wear or somebody wears, or even clocks. I've told you all I had a problem with clocks, and I had this young couple. The husband had just answered the call to preach, and they came into my house. And guess what? He walks straight up to the clock and he says, "What's up with this clock?" So there are items that can be haunted or possessed items, and these children are not told, hey, you know, they're not given any kind of spiritual guidance. And so kids left on their own, that's what they're going to do, is they're going to go after something that's creepy and cool and gets them lots of likes on social media and such. The movie ends about the way that I thought it would. The tricksters, they get their way. I won't blow it all for you, but I would just tell you, beware of haunted items. Don't talk to the dead. I can't think of any, like I said, situation where talking to the dead is a good thing, because the dead are, they're resting. And you're not talking to the dead, you're talking to demons.